Now,
scenario?
Sure.
So I'm kind of using a little bit of this from a recent listing appointment that I had and a few comments that other maybe sellers at some point have said to me. So I showed a house to a person that I got off Marketplace, and then they had me come over the next day to look at their house. So I already did the house tour. We went around. So I showed Mark around the house and everything. So now we're like sitting. And so, that's
Okay.
Thank you so much for coming. I have been waiting such a long time to talk to somebody, because I really wanted to sell my house last June, but I wanted to be patient because I knew today is the day. Don't have to pay commission anymore to a buyer's agent. So thank you for finally coming and listing my house.
Okay, great. Let's go ahead and get it rolling.
Let's get it rolling. Tell me a little bit about, like, what you do and why you are set apart, from other agents. What sets you apart?
Well, I can't speak to what other agents do, but I can tell you what we're going to do to get your house sold. We have a multitude. Honestly, I don't know if you know it, but we're located right here in St. Charles. We have 97 agents. So, and our company is set up a little bit different than some. Is that we're not all off doing our own little thing. You're actually going to have 97 agents working to get your house sold. Now, in addition to that, we have our whole marketing program. Which, if you've got a second, I would love to show you our marketing plan.
Please do.
Okay, so in that case, then I would go into the marketing portion of our listing presentation. I talk about things like, we're first we're going to put your house into the MLS. Has anyone explained to you what the MLS does?
Not really.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
The MLS is called the Multiple Listing Service. Actually, it is the database that all of the agents in the entire St. Louis metro area use. Actually, it runs almost to Jeff City and even into Illinois. It's going to expose your house to about 15,000 agents. So as soon as I hit the button that says send, they're all going to know exactly the details of your house, how much you're asking for, and when we want to get it sold. So now, the big benefit of that also is we also send, not in addition to that, we also will send out to over 3,000 individual websites. Have you heard of Zillow?
Yeah.
There's Zillow, there is Realtor.com, there is a multitude of, there's 3,000 of them. So I'm going to send your house out and market to all 3,000 of those.
Okay.
Do you have any other questions?
What do you do besides just put it in the MLS?
Well, the MLS actually, the chances of the buyer coming into your house is going to be about 90% that it's going to come through the MLS. So that is by far our biggest marketing tool. In addition to that, we're also going to hold open houses. Is that something you'd be interested in?
Yeah, can I have one every weekend?
You know what?
And twice on Sunday.
You know what? Maybe we could do that. I tell you what. I mean, are you concerned that it's going to take like more than a couple of weeks to get sold?
No, I guess not.
Okay. Yeah, because I can tell you right now, in the market we're in, if we price your house right, the chance of us even having an open house might be slim.
Okay. Well, you said that, we kind of talked about price a little bit, and you said that there's one house that sold for 500 and one house that sold for 425, and I want to get 500 for my house.
Sure.
So, what do I need to do to be on that high end? And I've got, builder grade carpet, and is that something that I need to change, but I don't really want to do a whole lot and spend a lot of money? Sure.
Well, in that case, I would revert to, we've all been through the training that Anthony's done as to how you present. At that point, we should already have a pretty good game plan as to how we're going to price the house. And if you've gone through the whole thing and said, okay, now here's what I believe are the comparable values at your house, where do you feel your house fits in? Of course, they're going to go right to the high side and go, well, this one, or they're going to tell you, well, I know the one across the street sold for $500,000, and you're thinking it's going to be $450,000. So if that one sold for $5,000, mine's a lot better. I want to go for $5.25. So at that point, what I've always done, I say, hey, look, we all just watched the Olympics, didn't we? Whenever there is a judgment, they usually take out the low and they take out the high and throw them away, and we work off the center. How does your home compare to center? Are you better than center? Or are you worse than center? And they're all going to tell you they're better, but they're not going to tell you they're all the way up here. They're going to tell you, well, I'm better. Okay, then we need to determine what the market's going to believe. How much better than center are you? And ultimately, just so you know, this is 100% your decision. It's not me buying your house. We together have to determine what someone else is going to pay for the house.
Okay.
You also have to say you need to price it to attract the buyers, not to scare the buyers away.
Correct. And a good thing, especially now, you can talk about in this market. In this market, there is no really such thing as underpricing or overpricing a property because they're going like this. If your house is priced right, we're going to have multiple offers on it within a week or two. If we don't have offers on it within a week or two, we overshot. It's just that simple.
Okay. And so tell me about how the commission works, because I know I've heard on the news and people are telling me I don't have to pay a buyer commission.
True, and you don't. Now, whether or not you do is a marketing decision. The same as any company makes when they have to market their properties. And by you not paying that out to a buyer side, we have to worry, would you be cutting buyers out? Because we need to work off the net of what, that's a check that you get to walk away with. So there is some confusion in that, hey, all of a sudden buyer's agents don't get paid. Well, they do. The only thing the lawsuit did was it broke both sides of that commission apart. In the old days, I would come in here and I'd tell you, I'm going to charge you 6%. You say, okay, that's about fair. And you never had to deal with it anymore. Now we have to break that apart. So I come in, I tell you, I'm going to charge you 3%. Now there's going to be an agent on the other side who's also going to want their 3%. Where does that come from? It can either come from you and we can work it into the price, or it can come from the buyer side. Naturally, you're going to think, well, let's go with the buyer side. But that's going to affect the offer if they make an offer, the offer that they're going to make. And when I say if, they're also going to have the same information. So when they're out looking at houses and they find 2 or 3 or 4 houses that they kind of like, their agents are going to call me and say, is there a cooperating payout? And I'm going to say, on this house, no, there's not. So so now they might call the other 3 houses and find out there is a cooperating payout. So the buyer's like, well, that's 3% less I have to bring in. So that's going to factor in the same as any other monies that they might have to bring in. For instance, if your house needs a new roof and the other ones don't, that's going to factor in. These are all factors that go into a buyer's decision. And we'll sit down and we'll work these out as they come in and decide what's a good offer, what's a bad offer. I would recommend we do offer to the buyer side. If you choose not to, hey, that's fine.
So should I, maybe throw in like $2,500 for a buyer's agent?
You could, yeah. But you're still going to be in the same boat of the buyers having to come in with their funds. And here, side note, depending on what type of house you're doing, it could be as simple as, hey, you're in a first-time home buyer market. These people are not going to have the funds.
Okay. So what do you suggest?
I would suggest we do it the way real estate's been done for the last 50 years. 6% payout to us, and then we'll go ahead and take care of the rest.
So how much are you paying that other agent?
3%.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So if there is no other agent, then I only have to pay you 3%. Is that right? Actually,
in that case, if another person comes in unrepresented, our fee is 5%. And I know what you're probably thinking right now. You're probably thinking, well, why? I mean, what's going on? How come I like to pay 1%? Or how come I'm not paying half? Well, the reason is because if there is no other agent, quite honestly, my workload, it doesn't even double, it triples. And not only does my liability increase, but your liability increases. Okay. And you let them pause for a second and say, well, because now there's not another person on the other side representing them. It's almost like if you went to court and you used the other side's lawyer and it didn't turn out the way you wanted, wouldn't you be a little aggravated? So what happens if they buy your house and it doesn't turn out the way they wanted? They're going to be aggravated. What are they going to do when they're aggravated? They're going to start suing. They're going to sue me. They're going to sue you. And my job right now is to keep you out of that. My job is to let you sell your house and get on with your life.
That makes sense. So if I use you when I'm going to buy another house, how does that work?
It works the exact same way. We would sign an agreement, technically be holding that you're going to pay us 3%. However, I can already tell you 90 to 95% of the cases, the other side is going to pay that. If they don't, we're going to factor that into our offer the same way I just explained to you. Someone else is going to factor it into you. So there really is no there's no big savings and there's no big overage. It's the same as it was. We're just breaking it apart. So you ready to go?
Yes.
All right.
I have a question about that.
Sure.
You made a good analogy about using an accountant.
A lawyer.
No, it was
A net sheet.
No, it was about, you said, would you go to somebody who charges this, somebody who charges that? Remember we were talking about? Like,
Yes, we discussed it the other day. I don't remember what the whole scenario was.
Can I have a question?
Sure.
So, you said, like, setting, like, Jeannie, I'm gonna have the right price for you. And I can ask, how can you know it's gonna be the right price?
Because
If I want a 500, if you
because the market tells me it's the right price.
just
The-
doesn't want.
The market prices your house. I don't price it. You don't price it. It's whatever a buyer is willing to pay. It's just that simple. I would be performing, even though I would joke with him. Even though I'm not a doctor, I'd be performing malpractice if I sat here and said, I guarantee you're going to get $500,000 for your house. Because it depends on because I don't know. It might be $490, might be $525. We've all been there, haven't we? I mean, when you priced a house and went, oh, geez, there's no way. And then all of a sudden you end up with 3 offers and one's $20,000 over. And you're thinking, good thing I didn't throw out a hard number. I'd look stupid right now. Mm-hmm. Sure.
Tell me about this lawsuit that I've been hearing about on the news. Yeah.
What exactly have you heard?
The sellers don't have to pay a commission anymore.
Oh, well, honestly, they really never did. I mean, and to be honest, you don't even need to pay me right now. You can stick a sign in your yard and you can sell on your own. Now, the question you have to ask is it going to be advantageous for you to hire a realtor? And then that's why I'm here. I'm here to explain to you what I would do if I was selling my house. So the question you ask is about what you've heard about this lawsuit, and it kind of piggybacks on what Jenna said about how I don't have to pay a buyer's agent anymore. Well, you never really had to, and you don't have to now. I'm just telling you the way I think you might get the best bang for your buck is if you do. And then I would go into, again, the reasons I just said before about how the whole thing breaks out, and you might be denying yourself buyers if you don't.
Can you explain the lawsuit though?
Explain it as kind of like what it is. No, it was a class action lawsuit brought against the National Association of Realtors that said that we were price fixing because we were sharing our commissions with the other side. And so after, like all class action lawsuits, after a whole lot of lawyers' fees and a whole lot of time, we're pretty much back to where we were to start with. The only difference is, instead of you paying one side 6% and then they take care of it, now it actually breaks out and you'll see what both sides are making. There's really no much difference.
Still the same on the seller net sheet.
Mm-hmm.
It's gonna say commission Alexander Realty, commission to XYZ.
Mm-hmm.
Off the seller side.
Mm-hmm.
It's gonna look the same. Different, but same. Same, but different.
We haven't had one that closed yet, have we? But it's gonna look the same.
It's going, yeah. I mean, it's the same. I mean, it's the same as it's been since 2016 when they did Dodd-Frank. That was when they broke them apart. Right. Right. That was when they broke them apart.
Like, the buyer's gonna see it, but it's still on the seller side. Does that mean?
I don't think they will do it.
I don't think they will do it.
I don't think they'll do it.
Unless
So-
the portion's actually coming from the buyer.
Right, like right now, the difference is always, there is a difference on the commission, still on the buyer's also. As a charge to the buyer. Like if you do 2.73.
Right. But if you're just getting the flat 2.7
Right, they don't
all
see it.
around.
Right, they don't see it. But I'm wondering now.
They're gonna see it on the contract.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
That's
everything's
true.
laid out on the contract.
Yeah.
So if I'm a first time home buyer and I'm like, I literally just graduated from college, got a lot of debt, and I want to buy a house, and I'm freaked out about, how do you explain the buyer's agency to a first time home buyer with a little bit of money for their closing cost or whatever? How would you explain that to me?
I would explain. Okay, you might be freaking out because what happens if I have to pay Jen and it's going to cost me $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 that I don't have? You know what? We would work that into every offer the same way we would your lender's closing costs, the same way we would home repairs. Anything that you might have to pay to come in, we'll know that up front. So what it means is we need to take a step back, figure out your situation. That's why you're here with me. Let's figure out your situation, because my job is to get you into a home. It's not to tell you you can't. So we're going to get you into a home, but we need to back the bus up a little bit. In the past, and I'm sure you probably are doing it right now. When you decided it's time to buy a house, you get real excited and you jump to step 3 or 4 of the home buying process, don't you? You jump on Zillow and you're like, oh, look at this house, look at that house, look at this house, look at that house. Oh, how much is this a month? Okay, great, I can afford that. And you're already 3 steps into it. Let's go back to step 1. And let's start this process, because my job ultimately is to get you in a house and be able to stand on the front porch and give you a big hug and go, you did it. So let's start at step 1. Are you good with that?
Did you guys get the email from Heather about the different types of, display all the different types of ways? Yes.
Mhm.
I haven't looked at that yet.
Yeah, it's good. Some form too.
Who sent?
Okay.
Heather Mayfield.
I-
How do you mean work it in the contract?
This the same way you'd work in
Oh,
lender's closing costs. I mean, I don't know if anybody else has been in a spot, but haven't you been in a spot where someone who's buying a house and they really have zero money, and like, okay, and the lender said they've got to have $2,500 in closing costs, or this deal's not going to happen. Our fee's the same way.
So can we call the compensation for the cost?
It depends on who you're talking to. I wouldn't overcomplicate the discussion you're having with them. I mean, if it's all part of it, I would just tell them it's all kind of all part of the closing costs.
So like if she has 3% on her buyer's agency and they're paying the other side, it's paying out of 2.7, and there is no wiggle room, they don't want to do it. You would take that little difference and you could throw that. If they say no, we're not paying the 3% and they can't afford it, you could throw that in.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I would think you could just work that into price. I wouldn't overthink point 0.03, on a contract. I mean, I don't know. I think no. I mean for just like in general. Yeah. I mean, you could, or
Not
you.
the price of the home, but if they're maxed out on their
Mhm.
seller concessions.
Marcy just had that, and she's like, she weighed the difference, they would not pay it, and she's like, the buyer's already in over there.
Yeah. Well, and you know what? And you know what? In that case, you take your 0.3% and write that off as a marketing expense, and go back at your buyers and go, okay, I'll tell you what, I can waive this for you, but this is what I'd like from you, kind of in a nice way. You having referrals, having first time buyers, they're going to have a lot of friends in that same price range, and just think of that as like a marketing expense. So
Is that something we can do as a tax deduction as a loss?
no.
I'm just thinking that, if our business, if we charge 3% and only pays out 2.7, can we write off that 1.5?
Yeah, we'll have to ask Donna.
Question.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Because then I'm gonna start charging 4 or 5%.
Yeah.
So
You
what
get
are the
that
questions
free?
did you have this morning? You talked to me this morning about something.
So, Mark, you said about, Jenny asked about the closing costs for the first buyer. How do you address that for them? You said because they have to have that money anyway, right?
Correct.
So
Which-
they have to give the down payment plus closing costs.
I've got a real bonus for you guys who all showed up. I'm gonna do it after this is over. You're gonna be thankful you showed up today.
Mark, it was like, you're in your agreement, it pays out like, let's say, that's 6%, I mean, or you pay not 3, but the other side only has 2.7, why do you get to keep, for this listing contract, why do you get to keep the extra?
Oh, that was the accountant one. Okay, so yeah. So what happens is, remember we all have that a checkbox that says we're 6%, but a buyer's agent comes in and says, well, I can only take 2.5. And you check off that box that says the extra 0.5 comes to me. And they ask, so well, what's this all about? It's like, the response I would give is, yes, we actually charge you 6% to sell your house. Now, if a buyer's agent comes in and if they're willing to work for less than half, what that tells me right off the bat is this is a less than half agent. And I'm going to end up doing the difference between their less than half and half myself. It's almost like if you went around and got quotes to do your taxes this year, and everyone told you they were $1,000, and one person said I'm 500. Don't you think you're going to end up paying for that in the long run?
Say that again.
So you've got 6% on your listing side.
Right.
Buyer's agent comes in and says, "Well, I'm only taking 2.5." So there's that extra 5%, 0.5%, whatever it is, it's gone. So you check off on the box of that extra 0.5%. It comes to you, and your seller, if they catch it, don't overthink this. If they even catch what's going on, they go, "Whoa, how come that 0.5% goes to you? I thought your fee was 3%, and how come this doesn't come back to me?" Well, because I can already tell you, if there's an agent out there who's willing to work for 2.5%, I'm going to end up doing, I don't know, half their job, maybe a fourth of their job, just to keep this deal together, so you can sell your house and move on. Because I can already tell you, this is going to be it's going to be a chore.
They don't know their value, so with their own buyer, so I'm gonna end up
Correct. I'm going to end up holding their hand through most of this. And isn't that kind of what you want me to do? Because ultimately, my goal is not to be like an attorney and put up our wall and fight. My goal is to get your house sold. And if it means I got to do half their job, I'm going to do half their job.
I have two other things that have come up recently.
Sure.
And one is I've had several buyers that are like scared to do a hard pull on their credit and like go through that. So
They're not willing to do it once, then
yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
that's a part of
it
the
was.
process.
That's all part of the pre-approval. And they're like, "No, I don't want that done because it's going to dink my scores." Like, well, wait a minute. This is a conversation you should be having with a lender, because I can almost guarantee you're not the first person who ever got pre-approved. And you should back up and say, "Look, because this again." Remember, you're at step 3 and 4. Remember we talked about how you're looking at houses and think how great this is. We need to go back to step 1. Step 1 is, are we pre-approved, and for how much?
And I would explain to them that, talk to the lender, knowledge is power, learn what you can from that lender.
Yeah.
Internal power.
Yeah.
And it's like it's not like they don't already have a really nicely priced home and have very good jobs and probably just but it's like lately. And the other thing, I really kind of responded, but I want to know your response to when I was talking to Mr. Seller, and the wife left the room, so we were just kind of chit chat, and he was saying when they bought their home, they would just call the agents on the sign. He said one time, he just did a couple appointments through Zillow. He goes, so we signed like a lot of different agreements.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh gosh, okay. So how would you, if I'm telling you that, well, we just called this name on the sign, and we had several different people showing us different stuff.
I would say, ooh. Well, did they explain to you buyer agency? Because my guess is they didn't, and here's why. Because when you sign those papers, you were signing contracts with all of those individual agents that you would use them on your next purchase, and all of those contracts have a time frame. So you might be beholden. I don't know. I'm not a lawyer, but I would dig those papers out, because you might owe all of those agents a commission when you buy a house. I don't know. I can tell you what our form says. Our form says, I'll be happy to show you one house, and that's it. I don't know what theirs say. My guess is theirs probably say you might be wrapped into it for a while. If I were you, I would dig those papers out, and I would start looking at that.
Do you think that would scare them away, like go back to one of those agents?
Well,
No.
This was like a couple years ago when they bought their house.
No.
So it was in the past.
So
what would you say to tell him basically,
Well, plus
don't
they
do that
it's like,
again?
okay, you can. There's nothing that says you can't. But every time you sign a piece of paper, I would make sure you understand what's on that piece of paper. Because right now, and it's exactly what I said, right now we're going through a changeover, and there's a lot of agents out there who are a little misinformed and who just quite honestly just don't know what's going on. And they're going to say, oh, my company said you have to sign this before we go look at a house. And they don't even realize what's written on that piece of paper. So I would read everything you sign and have it explained to you before you sign anything from this point on. And then just pause. Uncomfortable pause. So you ready to get rolling?
If they don't release it, they are responsible for paying for the commission, right? They have to
Yeah.
Release it, they lose it.
It could be.
Well, what are the benefits of just using, just signing this paper with you? What are the benefits? I mean, what if you're not available when I want to go look at this?
At that point,
And
you've already either should have had or willing to have right now a buyer agency presentation. Like, it's great that you asked that. Here's what we do for you as a buyer's agent. And you go right into your talk about, we're gonna find you the house, or we're gonna find you this, and you go right into there. Usually, and I can tell you, if you're worried about the questions, you're worried about all the objections, those can be handled ahead of time in a presentation before those even come up. Sometimes if you're getting a lot of objections, you have to look at yourself and go, okay, I did not have a well enough presentation prepared that addresses all their questions. And I mean, we actually have a basic presentation here that you can tweak, and maybe that means we might even start having a few classes where people can come in and you take the presentation and tweak it to however you want it. Because I can tell you in my past experience, whenever I had something that blew up on me, Renee would usually be the one who goes back and says, "Did you address that during the presentation?" And usually I didn't. And a good point that Renee also brought up is even when you deal with family and friends, you deal with them the same way in a very professional manner, because we're getting to a point now where I think a lot of the agents who are, should I say, struggling, are going to struggle a hell of a lot more, because now when it used to be pretty easy for the agent who sold a house or two a year and had like another job, and all of a sudden Uncle Bob and Aunt Mary said, "I'm going to look for a house," and they're like, "Oh, I can help you with that." And they're like, "Well, how much is it?" "Oh, it's free." "Okay, great." Now that Uncle Bob and Aunt Mary have to sign a contract that says we're going to pay you $10,000, are they always going to go with that person, or are they going to go with someone who's a real professional? That's where I think the people who are on the top end are going to flourish. The people who are on the bottom end are going to struggle. So,
well, and it's been like years since I really was interviewed for a listing. It was I always just kind of felt like, whatever that saying is. And I got interviewed and I was not prepared. And it was so hard for me because I was kicking myself before I even got out the door. But it was just a really good learning experience. And I think now I just want to be totally prepared on both sides, because I'm seeing just from this one couple, how I could have done things so much better for their benefit. Because I think they still have like a lot of questions and things, because I didn't do it right.
that was your aha moment. You know what? We've all been there.
My aha moment.
I've been there 1,000 times.
Yeah.
Walk out, got in the car, and went, "Shit, I blew that one."
I still remember mine.
I know. We all had it. I mean, this is why I've always been so big on. I talk about scripts and dialogues, and everyone I talk to, because I used to be the rolls her eyes and goes, "Oh God, I hate scripts. I just want to talk to people." You know what? When you talk to people, you screw it up.
And you're all over the place.
Because scripts and dialogues, it doesn't mean I'm reading off a piece of paper. It means the normal way I speak and knowing what questions are coming at me. And don't anybody hold me to this, but I remember a long time ago listening to Mike Ferry, who was Tom Ferry's dad. Who had his whole he sells his whole coaching thing. He said, you can walk on the street right now, stop somebody and say, you should list your house for sale right now. And there's only 7 objections they can have. Do you have answers to those? I went, that was kind of an aha moment, because I need to have answers to those. When someone looks at you and goes, so how are you any different than the Coldwell Banker agent who was just in here this morning? What's your answer? You have to have an answer for that. You can't go, because you know what we normally do? We normally default to, well, I provide great service. Is that really an answer?
Well, she asked me that, and I felt the blood.
I know.
Run out of my. I did. I felt like I'm sitting there going, boo. Oh, I don't know.
But here again, that's when you. I know.
Like me.
I know. But that's what happens when you're like, well, I don't want to refine my scripts and dialogues. I'm just going to go talk to people. What happens when they ask you that question? You're like, crap. I don't have a good answer. Any other points?
Don, remind me, I want to look at our listing presentation. the one, and I don't think we've seen that yet. It's the change on the internet,
Presentation or the guide?
listing. We did
No, I don't think we have.
All right, so now I'm going to tease it for the video. I'm going to cut it off. So now I'm going to show you something that popped up yesterday, a way that you can have the commission talk with your buyers without ever having to have the commission talk by letting someone else do it. I just wanted this on like a different video. All right, so this came up yesterday during a roundtable, which, by the way, I'm going to make a big push to tell everyone for the next 6 months, I highly recommend you come to the roundtables, because from this point on, we're going to discuss things like we're talking here, the nuances of the change. Not because right now what I'm seeing, everybody else, even the ones who are getting training, are doing okay, this is what goes in this spot, this is what goes in that spot, but the nuance is what's going to take you to the next level. And this came up yesterday when we were talking about, it was a posting on lab code agents, and the posting was an agent said, my buyer's lender contacted me and wanted a copy of my buyer agency agreement. They're like, WTF? What took this for? And then a bunch of postings where people going, oh, they shouldn't have that. They don't need that. You tell them to go pound sand. Tell them to get a different lender. And I went, all of a sudden the light bulb came on. I went, wait a minute. No. You guys look at this all wrong. Use your lender partner to explain your commission before you even have to do it. Is anybody following me? So you get in good with your lender partner and say, okay, my commission is like any other closing cost that they're going to have to go over on their final, not their final, but their preliminary costs. So when they're over there and they're like, okay, so I'm going to draw up our estimation of our closing costs, your commission is going to be one more line on there. And when they go, whoa, what's this $8,000 real estate commission? Oh, this is what the agents charge. Because this time it's coming from an independent third party. It's not you saying, I charge you $8,000. They're saying, oh no, this is the buyer side.
And it's a typical buyer too, typical agent doesn't have to be.
So I got a pre-approval. They had done that already.
Yes. So then, by the time they come back to you and you're like, oh, so you have your pre-approval? Are you getting ready to go look at houses? Okay, here's my agency agreement. Did they already talk to you how this works? And I don't, because they're going to have the conversation when they go, wait a minute. So you mean to tell me I got to come up with $22,000 to buy a house or whatever that number might be? The lender is going to have the conversation of the same one they had before. Well, if you don't have those funds right now, there are ways around that. You should go talk to your agent and they'll explain to you how you can get in this house for they'll work it out for only $4,000. Go back and talk to Jen about that. And then when they come in and go, okay, I'm so confused because the lender told me I had to come up with $22,000, but then said something about you might be able to get it down to $4,000. Sure, have a seat, I'll show you. And they've already had the commission talk before it even comes from you. I'm like, dude, if we can set this up right with a handful of our lenders, and again, it doesn't even have to be, I'm not pushing anybody, but make sure your lender is on board with how this whole thing is going to work. And they can be your partner side by side on getting this through. Yes.
We talked about bringing the lenders in, but what if you did a video that we could share with our like I could just take it and I could send it to Russ and I could send it to Sean. That way it's not
right
awkwardness, but go, hey, listen to what Mark has to say here, and then let's talk about this and let's see.
And work with them on their scripts and dialogues of how they're going to approach this.
But I think it would be helpful if it was kind of coming.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I want you to do for our agents here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, because
just put something out on the forum, and then we can maybe.
And here's the deal. I don't think we're asking anything out of the ordinary. They should have that on there anyway, because technically this is a closing cost that they're responsible for.
Now.
So what? So I mean, I think they're doing an injustice by not bringing that up, by not putting that on their.
Yeah, so that's when I got
on their estimate
from Molly. It had agent's commission
Mhm.
and their closing costs, and it said next to it possibly negotiated from seller.
I love that. I love that. And then if you can send them off to get pre-approved before
And
you
same
even have that talk.
percentage that coming in the letter or is number?
Number, I mean, I think she just did it on.
Yeah. Yeah, they probably just work it out on like whatever the pre-approval. It's the same way they estimate taxes and all the rest of that stuff. Mm-hmm.
But they can work with you on this line item.
Mm-hmm. But and how they approach it can make or break your deal.
Do you know what they should say, or is that all on them?
I would help them a little bit by just nothing more than like what Shelley said. Oh, and by the way, here's a list of all the closing costs, because on the estimate it'll say cash to close at the bottom, and they're going in. Let's say they're buying a $300,000 house, and it's going to say $25,000, and not even that much. Let's just say it's like $16,000, and they're like, holy shit, that's a lot of money. Because I thought this was only like a 3% down, or 300,000 would be $9,000. So I thought we were paying $9,000, and now you're telling me it's going to be 17 or 18. Well, what's up with this? Well, here's a list of your closing costs. Now, a lot of these closing costs, they can all be negotiated into the contract.
You don't know if they can get approved on the total.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
In case they had to pay.
And that's a benefit to you, because now you know your buyers have the money if you have to throw it on the deal. You know, because there was some other lab coat agents are like, well, what happens if we show up to closing and my buyers don't have any money? Well, you need to work that out with the lender ahead of time. And the lender will know, because the lender will pull copies of all their bank statements. So they're going to know if they got the money. So your lender is going to tell you, just so you know, they don't have the money to pay you. That's why I think it's going to be real important to work closely with the lender who you know, because you want to know they don't have the money to pay you. It better be in that deal somehow or another.
So you got to basically draw up your worst case scenario for your buyer, like honestly with them. Say, hey, worst case here, you need 22.
Yeah.
So you need 22,000. But there's possibly we could get all the way down to like 4 or 5 or 6.
Right.
Working on seller credits, working on your commissions being paid.
Oh man, I thought of that. Yeah, and if nothing else, just think of the way you can position yourself as a benefit as to why I need a buyer's agent. Why don't I just go directly to listing agent? Well, if you go directly to listing agent, you might have to end up paying us $20,000. Now, I can structure the deal to where you're only going to pay $4,500. Mm-hmm. So
I
anyway,
think that's the conversation we need to have right now. If we still have competitive listings. So let's use the example, $200,000 house, first time home buyer, they got next to no money, but they can afford the monthly payments.
Mhm.
We ran into this many times 7, 8 years ago.
Yes.
They need, let's call it the max 3%. Let's say they're conventional loan and they get 3% closing costs. They need all 6,000 in closing costs. Can't pay you commissions. And it's the first weekend this house is on the market and there's 10 people there when you walk in. We want this house. To me, I'm like, hey, a new house on the market, and you being a first-time home buyer needing all these credits, it's going to be really tough for us to get a new listing, but we'll give it a shot.
Mhm.
As many times as we need to, got to make an offer to get home accepted. How are we positioning that buyer in an already competitive situation to even increase the price another $6,000 for commission to get them the best offer? I mean, in reality, I'm thinking
Well, because of the appraisal.
but
at some point, we can't make them the competitive buyer.
It sounds like they wouldn't get it anyway. It's still a competitive market.
So they need to get more money.
Maybe, maybe not.
Yeah,
I don't know. All you can do is make your best offer. And you know, it was the same way. I mean, we've all dealt with it. I think it's gotten a little bit better, but we're all dealing with it before, where it's like, okay, my buyers can only go up to X amount, or they gotta have 2,500 back in closing costs. And you're like, it's killing me. You're like, but that's all I can do. So that's when you just need to have a heart with your buyer and go, here's the deal. You know, this is where we are. I mean, we can try to work it in the price of everything, and just see what happens. Yeah.
So like, I'm worried about this because like we all know like almost every variable, as soon as you change one, the trickle down effects in a transaction or in an offer.
Mhm.
We get that one smart buyer that can still only afford the $200,000 house, but they know, they say, well, I'm using you and it's hurting me to get that house. I'm going to go to the listing agent unrepresented. Somehow they know all of this.
Mm-hmm.
And say, I'm going to save my 3% and use a listing agent unrepresented. My dad's an inspector. my lender is one of my best friends.
Mm-hmm.
That's obviously the best case scenario here, but like that's our devil's advocate.
Mm-hmm.
Is that, do we just deal with that when it comes?
You did,
Say, hey,
yeah. You have to deal with it when it
this is
comes.
a 1% chance that's going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
That's what keeps me up at night. I know it's the dumbest thing ever, but how do I get around that? Besides my one thing of would you use the other side's lawyer when you go to court?
Well, and you know what?
That's my one thing.
But you do
Yeah.
have people, like we have a client who thinks they are smarter than everybody. And we have worked with them, written 7 offers for them over the course of the last.
They are not smarter than
No, usually those people are not.
They're younger than most, and
They're younger than most.
he has already told us, because we just wrote an offer for him, he looked at the buyer's agency and said, I will not sign this property only. And he said, because I will not pay out of pocket, I will not build it in,
Mhm.
like,
So if this deal we have going on falls through, he wants us to write a per house on every one. So we show him 5 houses, he wants 5 of them listed at whatever they're paying out. And if they're not paying out, I guess he's on his own.
And that's, to be honest, you know what? That's the issue. And usually that's a little bit higher dollar buyer, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
Well, that
They
sucks
always-
because when he go to work, he knows he's not gonna get paid.
We've also shown them, and I'm not kidding you, at least 90 houses.
mhm.
and they're not afraid to hire a lawyer is the other thing. They already had hired a lawyer to review the HOA docs that we got out of
So my question is to you, is it
Yeah.
really worth it
It's
to you?
not worth it.
Well, you get them from a lead source that we can't burn.
Yeah,
What?
so it is.
You get them from a
Oh,
lead
I
source that we can't burn, and I will never give up on somebody I've spent this much time with, because one
Yeah.
agent will come in, show one house.
And then get it.
Yeah, they will. They will.
So, but I do have a question for just the room
That
in
sucks.
general. It feels like, I don't know, we're going into fall and winter or summer slump and all of that. It feels like something